Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. This edition of the Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by these great sponsors. Axon started out of a passion for keeping agriculture moving. Imagine having 100 years of tire and wheel knowledge in your back pocket the next time you sell a piece of ag equipment. To find more or become an Axon dealer, please visit agmarkets.com. This podcast is also brought to you by Valley Transportation. Valley Transportation has been hauling ag and construction equipment across the country for the past 33 years. Call Parker at 800-657-4910 or go to valleytransinc.com for all your trucking needs. At Valley Transportation, our goal is to help you reach yours. This podcast is also brought to you by Ag Direct. No matter how you buy your ag equipment, from a dealer, auction, or a private party, Ag Direct can help you finance it. You can even apply online at agdirect.com. Learn more about your financing options at agdirect.com.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving iron time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here. Moving iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. Markets with Shawn Hackett. This edition of Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by Axon Tire, helping dealers move more iron for the past 100 years. For more information, go to axontire.com. Also, if you'd like to get yourself a super sweet pocket knife, go to marketing@axontire.com and give them all your details, and they will send one to you. Just tell them that you heard it on the Moving Iron Podcast. Make sure you go to marketing@axontire.com to get that free pocket knife. Valley Transportation has been hauling ag and construction equipment across the country for the past 33 years. Call Parker at 800-657-4910 for all your trucking needs, or go to valleytransinc.com. Valley Transportation, our goal is to help you reach yours. And no matter how you buy your ag equipment, from a dealer, an auction, or a private party, Ag Direct can help you finance it. You can even apply online at agdirect.com. Learn more about your financing options at agdirect.com. Shawn's with Hackett Financial out of Boca Raton, Florida, and he's kind of nice enough to come on a couple times a week to talk about what's going on in the marketplace. So, Shawn, how you doing this morning, man?
Pretty good, Casey. Real good. We want to keep this program friendly today. That's all I want to say. Friendly.
Yeah, just don't be smacking me. We'll be all right. Okay. All right.
Well, I am losing hair every day. So I'm very sensitive about that. Extremely sensitive.
You and me both. I shave my head on purpose. It feels like it's not a hairstyle. It's more of a what do you call that? A camouflaging effect. So yeah, works well. Well, we're going to talk about the sudden atmospheric or stratospheric warming events that you've been talking about here. I think before we get that, let's just touch on this. Right before we got started here, you were mentioning that things are just getting hammered in the marketplace, and you and I did a scramble trying to figure out what was going on, but it looks like the markets are getting hammered over some news someplace.
I don't know. I haven't found anything yet, but just in the last half hour, wheat's almost got limited down for a bit. Crude got hit out of nowhere. The dollar got hit out of nowhere. Some news came out. Don't know what it is, but there's are speaking in Turkey supposedly about everything. And so there must have been some communique of some sort that, maybe they're going to have a period of calm or something. I really have no idea, other than the markets are getting hit, that maybe things are calming down a little bit. And we might find out a little later that, maybe the meeting of the minds are going to try to de-escalate things for a little while. And we've talked about this before. At some point, you could have some, hard down reactions in the markets if the market senses that maybe some supplies have been coming out of Ukraine more than they were thinking. So don't know exactly what the news is, but markets are reacting right now, and we'll just have to wait and see whether it's a false news story or it's actually true. But something got the markets stirred up this morning. So
we'll have to check that out and see what happens and see how things play out. So let's talk about what's going on here. See, we've talked a lot about this April weather that's coming up. April is officially 3 days away. Usually we get our worst winter in spring here in the Panhandle. So it's not uncommon to get a late March, mid-April type of blizzard comes along. Kind of what you've talked about here, Shawn, coming into April. It really looks like things are really starting to stage for that event to happen here in April.
Well, let's talk about what has happened. We did have a very, very strong sudden stratospheric warming event where the Arctic the stratosphere air over the Arctic warmed suddenly. In fact, it was right up there with one of the top 5 strongest warmings since 1975. So this was no minor event. Then once you get that, you can have two different things can happen. You can have a displacement of the cold air in the stratosphere, or you can have a splitting of the air in the stratosphere. It could go one of two ways. This one's a split where the stratosphere, the polar vortex actually gets split into two separate pieces. To think of cell division, you take a cell and you split it, and now there's two different polar vortices. That has happened. So that's what we're dealing with here. And then now these two balls of cold air can go spinning around wildly. The last thing that needs to happen is you need to have that connect with the troposphere. And the way that happens is that the typical stratospheric jet winds in the stratosphere typically go westerly in the wintertime. And when they flip to easterly, that's showing a complete weakening of the polar vortex down at the tropospheric level, meaning it's connecting with the air on the ground. That has, in fact, also happened. So what we now have is a polar vortex weather regime. This is Northern Hemisphere. It's not just the U.S. So what we think it means is that we're going to have a pretty cold, a lot of cold shots of air that are going to come into the North American corridor, to the European corridor, Russian corridor over the next 30 days. And we think we're going to have the potential for a lot of significant snowfall in the northern tier of the Northern Hemisphere, and considerable rain in that central southern Northern Hemisphere. And of course, this is when we're supposed to be turning the wheel in Europe, in Russia, and in the U.S. to try to plant crops and harvest, winter wheat at some point, and to get the post-dormancy of winter wheat coming out in good shape. So all this would suggest unfavorable weather post-dormancy for winter wheat, and obviously for trying to get, cotton crops and corn crops and soybean crops and oats crops and winter wheat and spring wheat crops planted at a time of great angst in the market right now. And so this has been our forecast for a long, long time. And one way, Casey, that we try to look at things, there's something called the Maiden-Julian oscillation. We've talked about this before, but it's a measure of convection around the center of the globe. And typically, if you go into phases 1, 2, and 3, won't go into exactly what all that means, but just understand if the MJO goes into phases 1, 2, and 3, it tends to mean a greater chance for snowfall in the northern tier belt of the Northern Hemisphere, especially the northern tier of the grain belt. We went back to 1973 when we had the historic blizzard actually occurred there in that first week of April. To this day has never been broken in terms of amount of snowfall that occurred in Iowa and Minnesota and your area during that period of time. And that, of course, triggered a huge rally in grain markets during that spring season. It also went into phase 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to be monitoring MJO and to see if, right now the models are suggesting we could see this. Bottom line is, though, we think once we get this bearish trade that we're trading today, and then maybe we might trade into the planting intentions report on Thursday, we think there could be an opportunity for livestock producers to lock in some feed ahead of a more chaotic planting season and a potential for a rally back up on weather this time, not geopolitics.
So in 1973, that blizzard, I've heard people talk about that, and there was just tons of snow. I mean, like feet of snow. Like National Guard had to come in and like get people out of their house type of snow. Is that you kind of feel like something's setting up to be similar to that? Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Anytime you're trying to predict that kind of weather event, I mean, no one can say that it's definitely going to happen. It's kind of like when we predicted the frost in Brazil, something that hadn't happened in 26 years.
Right.
We can never say it's definitely going to happen. Only way you could do it, trying to look at our natural climate cycles, is what are the probabilities of a crazy weather event happening? We believe with the setup we just described, this polar vortex, sun-struck warming, splitting, connection with the troposphere, and the look that we might get a phase 1, 2, 3 MJO, the chances of this happening are the highest they can possibly be. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but we have our best chance for this kind of a 1 in 100 year kind of snow event in April that you're going to get. And so we're just going to try to monitor this MJO and see how, it's not going to happen this, if it's going to happen more. I think in Iowa, the peak of the storm was April 10th, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So the event, if it's going to occur, would be more around that time frame. So we're going to be trying to do our best to monitor all these micro variables and get a better look at, later this week what that looks like. But we think that most years that's not on the table. I mean, it's just not on the table. It's on the table, and it's on the table in a way that the best possible chance for it to happen are in place for now for that to happen. And so that's, just being on the lookout for that we could get something like that. And if it did occur and we're not able to get corn planted on time and spring wheat planted on time, the market's going to react to weather this time, even though right now it might be reacting negatively to geopolitics, and it may react negatively to this planting intentions report on Thursday, possibly. Ultimately, weather trounces all things. And if we have a delayed planting season, the market will put some weather premium back on. And so we think we're setting up for a potential opportunity for livestock producers to buy feed here, maybe over the next, week or so, depending on exactly what the story is today on geopolitics and how exactly the planting intentions report and the quarterly grain stocks report plays out on Thursday. So
right on. Okay. All right. Well, I want to talk about, a few crops, but crazy things are happening that we don't know what's happening. So it's hard to have that discussion. Because obviously what's driving the market right now is the uncertainty in the Black Sea region and what we see happening there. That volatility is definitely in place. Things keep moving the way they're going. But
think of it this way, Casey. We talked about this, I forget, either your last episode or the one before that. Everyone has an interest in getting the corn crop planted.
Absolutely.
Everyone. The world does, Ukraine does, Russia does, and China does. China signed this trade agreement with Russia, officially signed it the day of the invasion, by the way, just
pure coincidence, right?
It's just made, who would have known? But and China needs corn, and if China has grander intentions of going into Taiwan, I think the Chinese have to believe that we might restrict corn exports to China, which means they're really going to want this Ukraine corn. So if they're going to get this crop planted, when would a ceasefire or some kind of a calming down of tensions need to occur? How about right now? It would make sense that this would be the time to kick the can down. Let's all be friends for a little while. Get the corn crop planted. Start turning the wheels on the winter wheat crop. And once that's going, we still hate each other. Here we round 2 of the invasion. I almost feel like that's the setup here, Casey. And I'm no geopolitical grand wizard here at all in terms of these things, but it just seems to me logically it would make sense for Russia and China to find a way to get these crops harvested and planted before escalating this to the next level.
All right, so I think I just saw what's driving this here.
Sure.
So I just got a New York Times article popped up here on my phone, and the headline is Russia vows to reduce attacks in northern Ukraine, and basically they're saying having less troop presence in the Kyiv area. So that could be what's drawing that a little bit.
Well, we talked about this before, that I think that they're going to do everything they can to keep the ag areas of Ukraine intact and support the ag areas to be able to operate during this period. And maybe this is a sign that they're going to create a bubble in the ag group, in the ag areas, to let this happen, because quite frankly, Russia wants it to happen. China wants it to happen. So I really think that the markets have miscalculated that fact. They were trading zero in Ukraine, and China does not want zero out of Ukraine. It's not in China's best interest to have zero in Ukraine. And I cannot imagine that Xi Jinping out of China is talking with Putin and saying, that we want to obliterate Ukraine and ruin all that grain production that they desperately need. I just don't think that's the bigger game plan involved with this entire geopolitical escalation. I think they're calculating a lot of things. The calculation now is get the crop harvested, winter wheat, get the crop planted in corn, and oh, by the way, Russia, make sure you keep selling us that stuff that we need. And maybe this is the beginning of the de-escalation before the re-escalation over the summertime. That's just me talking out loud, but I just think we're set up for that right now.
Okay, so here's the quick opening paragraph of this article. So it says, this is from the New York Times. It says, here's the latest developments from Ukraine. A deputy Russian defense minister said on Tuesday that Russia would sharply reduce military activity near Kyiv in the first signs of progress as the diplomats from Ukraine and Russia discuss a possible ceasefire. So that's a big deal. I mean, that's the city that they want to take so bad, and they're going to sharply reduce the military activity in that area. That shows that they are getting close to, I don't know, I'm not a military scientist by any means, but it seems like that would be a sign that they're going to start a possible withdrawal if they're giving up on the main city that they went to take anyway.
They need to start turning a wheel in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
And they need to, and I'm not saying farmers aren't ready. I mean, I know some of the Ukraine farmers, some of the best farmers are around, and I'm sure a lot of them have a lot of their inputs and are ready to go. But they do need a safe environment to go ahead and do it. Mm-hmm. I've already seen some pictures that they're getting ready. So I think the game plan is let's let the farmers do their job. Let's make sure they can do their job, and then once they do their job, then we'll go back to hating each other later. And I think that's the game right now. I think that's the geopolitics is all about chess pieces. Like Garry Kasparov, the famous grand master chess player, he was thinking 15 moves ahead, and what you thought was a bad move here is why he beat you 15 moves later. I think what we're dealing with now is what they're doing today versus what they're anticipating doing 3 and 6 months from now. Right now, the game is de-escalation is what they want to achieve a greater goal later. That's my suspicion here.
Yeah. So. Okay. All right. So let's war game this real quick. This blows over. Well, let's put it this way. It blows over to a point that the Ukrainian farmers can go out, they plant the crop, and they bring in just a standard yield crop right now. Obviously, you still got to get it out. There's a lot of port issues in Mariupol. There's a lot of port issues in Odessa. A lot of this grain to go through Bremenhaven up in Germany. Those you start looking at some logistical issues that start playing into all that. Getting ships in and out of the Black Sea with the mines and everything that have been placed there, and getting insurance carriers to carry that stuff. It's a whole other thing. But let's just hypothetically say everything gets back to normal and get the grain out. What effect is that going to have on the market when you start looking at December corn and those kind of things?
Well, it would be if the market believes that it's a true shift. Then the markets have to take a lot of this geopolitical premium off. Now, of course, doesn't mean that geopolitical risk is off the table completely, but it means that the geopolitical premium should be less than it is. So, what does it mean? It certainly would mean lower prices, so long as the U.S. planting season goes well. And so that's my suspicion here. I think we could be looking at maybe a hammered down week this week on de-escalation in Russia, and potentially, I don't know what the USDA is going to say. I'm not going to sit here and profess that I'm a wizard at picking and determining what the USDA is going to say, but I have a sneaky suspicion. We told U.S. farmers we're going to run out of everything. We've given them prices that work under any and all circumstances. And the U.S. farmer that I know and love and dearly, that I've been working with for 30 years, is going to plant every single acre they can. They're not going to cut corners. They're going to plant every single corner they can, and they're going to look at Mars for potential increased acreage. And so I think the USDA is going to say that, and that might make all the balance sheets look a lot more bearish than they currently are, and then that sets the stage for sort of an unwinding of some of this hot money that was betting on, $15 wheat, corn, and $20 wheat, and that sort of thing. But that also offers the opportunity for the livestock producer to potentially get some feed bought at a price that just a week ago he might have not thought was possible. Because we do think we're going to have a very challenging first third of the growing season in the U.S. And I do think that the market will have to very quickly pivot and put weather premium back on. And I want to make sure, and of course, this geopolitical thing, by no means, even if what happens, and they get a ceasefire, and it's not over. We think that this geopolitical situation is a permanent change. It's going to keep coming back. We think there's bigger things ahead that's going to come. It's not going away, but it's temporarily going to deflate. So there'll be an opportunity for livestock producers to do something, dairy producers to do something. We're gearing up to hopefully make a good, strong recommendation to buy cash feed here over the next week and a half, if this scenario plays out like it looks like it may be playing out here with some kind of a hard down phase. We'll have to see.
Yep, so. Right on. All right, Shawn, good stuff as usual. Folks want to reach out to you and get more information about Hackett Financial and what you're doing over there. What's the best way to do that?
Our website is Hackett, Hackett, advisors.com. Lots of podcasts, white papers, sample reports to give your listeners a really good understanding of what we do to see if we could be of help. Right on.
And I am Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. Make sure you check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I have a YouTube channel called Moving Iron Podcast YouTube channel. I also have a LinkedIn page. Moving Iron Podcast is a LinkedIn page out there. Just check that out. Go to all those places and subscribe and like and do all those fun things. You have a good way of getting hold of all the information that comes out there. Go to MovingIronLLC.com so you can get everything Moving Iron related. Also, all the information for the Moving Iron Summit coming up here in Nashville, Tennessee, September 6th, 7th, and 8th. And Shawn's going to be there. He's going to be talking about what's going on from a weather perspective, and switching from an El Nino to from a La Nina to El Nino pattern, and what that looks like, a little bit different than we had the last discussion. So that'll be a good conversation for Shawn to have there, and there'll be a lot of good people there. So if you're a dealer of any kind and you want to enjoy that, be a part of that Moving Iron Summit, make sure you check that out. Go to Moving Iron LLC there. All the information is there for you, hotel registrations and all that kind of stuff. So check that out if you're interested, or send me an email at MovingIronPodcast at MovingIronPodcast.com, and I can get that back to you. So also, if you have a question for Shawn, Q&A Thursday is coming up. Make sure you send that in, and I will read it on the air. So with that, I'm Casey Seymour with Shawn Hackett. Let's move some iron, folks. Out. Axon started out of a passion for keeping agriculture moving. Imagine having 100 years of tire and wheel knowledge in your back pocket the next time you sell a piece of ag equipment. To find more or become an Axon dealer, please visit axontire.com. This podcast is also brought to you by Valley Transportation. Valley Transportation has been hauling ag and construction equipment across the country for the past 33 years. Call Parker at 800-657-4910 or go to valleytransinc.com for all your trucking needs. At Valley Transportation, our goal is to help you reach yours. This podcast is also brought to you by Ag Direct. No matter how you buy your ag equipment, from a dealer, auction, or a private party, Ag Direct can help you finance it. You can even apply online at agdirect.com. Learn more about your financing options at agdirect.com.
Moving higher in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving higher, time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here. Moving